Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Nervotics Q&A, the proud leaders in direct current education, sharing experiences from athletes to coaches, doctors, and other professionals worldwide. And today's conversation is hosted by our CEO, Matt Dell, who continues to lead the charge in expanding direct current therapy and education everywhere. Matt, good to see you. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you, Jake.
Awesome. We got a good one. Should we even wait or should we just bring him in?
I think this has gotten me excited. Can't wait to bring on our guests. So why don't we just jump right in and bring him on and introduce him if you could.
So he probably doesn't even need an introduction. So before we even begin, let's start with the video and then we can bring him on after that.
Love it.
There's one big guy who helped us put all this together, made us special every step of the way of the playoffs.
He wasn't the star, he was the fighter, a role player among giants, learning that in basketball, championships aren't given. They're earned in sweat, in silence, and in sacrifice. On the court, he became a champion. But as he once said, the measure of who we are is how we react to something that doesn't go our way. And his story was only beginning. He traded the jersey for the clipboard. And what he carried with him was more dangerous than any crossover or jumper you'd see on the court. He carried knowledge of the game. He carried vision. Detroit, Indiana, Dallas, every stop a battle, every game a test. In 2011, he led the Mavericks through the fire and toppled the empire of the league. Against the odds, against the critics, against the king himself, he carved his name into basketball immortality. And yet he never pointed to the spotlight. He pointed to the team. He's more than a coach. He's proof that greatness in basketball isn't about the hype. It isn't about the headlines. It isn't about the grind or the sacrifice or the late night practices when nobody's watching. Come game time, it's only about delivering results. It's all about the outcomes. This is Coach Carlisle, and his outcomes speak for themselves.
In 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana.
Jake, well done. Coach Carlisle.
Yeah, I got to hang out with you guys more often.
That has to pump you up because that was impressive. I learned a lot through that intro that I got to see for the first time. So welcome. Where are you calling us from? I see some sunshine behind you.
Yeah, I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia here for a couple of weeks. My daughter is a third year at University of Virginia. I went to school here and played here 40 some years ago. And I'm back in town and I'm doing a few projects with the university and spend some time with her, and my wife Donna is here too. And we got two little dogs with us as well. So we're not exactly traveling light.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So are you from that area then, Virginia, or where did you grow up as a youngster?
Yeah, I grew up in northern New York State.
Okay.
In a town called Ogdensburg up on the Canadian border.
Okay.
Not far from St. Lawrence University, Potsdam State University, but it's way up there. And so I've had quite a journey from there to prep school in New England and Worcester, to University of Maine for a couple of years, transferred to Virginia, sat out a year, played here at UVA for 2 years, played with the Celtics for 3 years, the Knicks for a couple of years, and then briefly with the Nets before being cut by the Nets and offered a coaching job in the same phone call. And so that's how my coaching career began. And I was an assistant for 11 years and then became a head coach in Detroit in the spring of 2001. And this coming year, I'll be headed into my 24th year as an NBA head coach. So quite a journey, and onward. It continues.
I love it. Well, tell I got to jump into that call. I mean, the call to get cut and then to coach. Tell us a little bit about that and the experience that you had with your one dream being shattered and then another door opening. How did that call go, or how did you feel at that point?
Well, it was unexpected. I had gotten an invite to the Nets training camp in the fall of '89 through some relationships. And, I was 30 years old, pretty much at the end. Body was starting to get beat up. And so I was hoping to get one last shot and see what I could do with it. And, 3.5 weeks of training camp, I actually made the team for a month. But the caveat was that our best player, who was Roy Hinson at the time, was out for the first month of the season. So when he was going to be returning, I knew that things were probably going to end. And so, I was prepared. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. I was always interested in coaching, but I certainly had no expectation that Bill Fitch, who was the coach at that time, and Fitch would go on to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame in 2019 as one of the all-time great franchise builders. And he won a championship in Boston in '81. So I was with him for 3 years. And then when he resigned after 3 years, Chuck Daly, who had just coached the Dream Team, got the job in New Jersey. And good fortune followed me into that situation as well. I'd known Chuck a little bit before that, and he decided to keep me on board for a couple of years. So my first 5 years as an assistant were with two of the greatest coaches in history. So I was very blessed.
Yeah. And is that kind of where you got your training, your background on coaching at that level? I mean, first, what is that like when you go from a player to a coach, and what do you have? What's the biggest challenges, especially as an assistant, to try to learn? Is it the system, the players, the motivation, what is it about those first few years as an assistant that you remember?
Yeah, the first year, I played with the team for a month. I didn't play a lot of minutes, but I became friendly with a lot of players. And so when you go from being a player and then you're a coach, all of a sudden, that's a pretty significant difference. Now, at that point, New Jersey was a team that was going to be hitting a really pretty pronounced rebuild. And so, a lot of the players were going to move on, and there would be a lot of new guys coming within the next couple of years. So, I started off doing scouting on the road. I did travel with the team, when I wasn't on the road scouting. I was around the team, and but there's an adjustment. When you go from being one of the guys in the locker room wearing the uniform to one of the coaches. And so fortunately we had good guys. It's a unique transition, but the guys that were there were terrific about it. And then, we had a lot of turnover the next couple of years, and before you knew it, I mean, virtually everyone was gone from that initial team the first year, and the franchise was moving forward.
Yeah, that had to be unique when you're in the locker room behind the scenes, kind of bitching to other players. I need more minutes. Why am I not getting minutes? I need minutes. And all of a sudden now you're the guy that's potentially can influence minutes. That had to be an interesting little transition, especially coming from a player to a coach. So, that's great. So one of the things you mentioned was, getting banged up. I can't even imagine. We know we've worked with so many, professional athletes, and in your, just the grind from high school to the college and then to the pro level, it's absolutely incredible the amount of, conditioning that's required. Tell our listeners a little bit about that process and, what you've seen over your time in the NBA as a player and a coach in terms of, what our professionals are doing differently, today that they weren't maybe doing, 20 years ago.
Well, a lot has changed. So much of it, success in any professional sports league is health. How healthy are your players? How healthy are your best players? And so, me personally, when I was playing in the NBA, I was a role player, and I was trying to make a team each year. There was only one team where I was Boston going into my third year where I had a guaranteed contract that I knew I was going to be on the team. The rest of the time, September, October, that was your playoffs if you were a role player the way I was. And so, when you're in your mid 20s, late 20s, generally you're feeling pretty good. And then, then it gets tougher as time goes on. And so, back then I certainly wish there had been, technology like ARP wave therapy, that would have been very helpful back in those days. But as I've gotten into coaching and now head coaching, managing health is another important aspect of the strategy of coaching NBA basketball. There are certain, you gain a feel for certain minutes thresholds that are best, trying to keep your team fresh, healthy, balancing the right amount of work, the right amount of rest when it comes to practice, those kinds of things. But, things today are so far advanced from where they were 35 years ago when I made the transition from playing to coaching that, it's a staggering difference.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so you mentioned that, seeing some of the technology changes like the direct current that, you've experienced, that you use, tell me, I'd love to hear how did you even hear about it? When did you first start utilizing the technology? How did that happen?
Well, for me, it happened through a relationship that's probably close to 50 years old. That's with a guy named Jeff Emery, who played at St. Lawrence University. And when I was a youngster growing up in Northern New York State, my dad and I went over to St. Lawrence all the time to play pickup ball. And so that's where I met Jeff. And then, we played so many hours, so many years on the court together. And then, when I ended up making the Celtics in the fall of '84, he had moved out to Los Angeles, and he was in the fabric industry with Milliken. I'd come out in the summer leagues to play, and I would stay with him and a couple of buddies of his in Manhattan Beach. And back in those days, I mean, if you were a young single professional athlete playing in the LA Summer League, if you wanted an optimal social experience, it was to hang around with Jeff and Chris and his guys. And I stayed with those guys, and so it was great. And then, years later, as Jeff transitioned out of, the fabric industry or the textile industry, he hooked up with the guys at ARP, and he became one of their ambassadors and one of the people that shared the knowledge, sold the machines and all that kind of stuff. And so I got my first exposure to it from him. And I've got one of the smaller recovery ones. And, I use it all the time. I travel with it all the time. And it's so useful because, as you get older, you get all kinds of things that pop up. Like, for instance, this past year, all of a sudden I had tennis elbow in my left elbow, which is not even my tennis racket elbow. And I don't even play tennis.
Yeah.
But the ARP was really helpful in working through that. And then, all kinds of other things pop up as you go through the years. And I find this machine very, very effective for, all these different applications. And so, all different parts of the body end up acting up at one time or another. And it's very helpful.
Yeah. It is amazing. I mean, we had, and Jake, I forget the gentleman's name. He works for the 76ers.
Dr. Liebman, Dr. Neil Liebman.
Yep. Yeah. He was talking about, he was introducing this to the 76ers, several years back. And this is back when Barkley and the team would look at him like, he had three eyes because they didn't know what this technology was, direct current. And then Barkley went to the 76ers, who had utilized direct current. We had a Q&A with him, and he was sharing that insight. And all of a sudden, because Barkley was the name, all these guys were like jumping on it. We still find today it is probably the best kept secret in professional sports. because all these pro athletes, you know, their bodies are their asset, right? That's what they're trying to keep, whether they're NFL, MLB, NBA, the pounding that they do. And a lot of these guys, you know, have to be somewhat secretive to, you know, because it's almost a secret weapon. You know, in the NBA, is that kind of still similar, except for maybe the top athletes? Because you still got that daily grind of trying to make teams. You know, what's that experience like inside do a lot of these NBA guys like travel with their own trainers and teams, and are they kind of utilizing this technology, you know, off season? What are your thoughts on how these NBA guys are taking advantage of this technology themselves personally, outside of the teams?
Yeah. You know, I don't know how many guys use the technology or own units. You know, I certainly would have to believe that if they knew all of the applications and how easy it was to use, and you know all the positive byproducts with, you know, circulation and blood flow and all that kind of stuff, a lot of them would be interested. You know, in 2012. We acquired Elton Brand he was an amnesty situation. So he kind of was on the open market, and we did a bidding thing, and we ended up getting him for a year in Dallas. And he had, it may have been an ARP wave unit. He was in the locker room before games. He would have the thing hooked up to his thighs, in his upper thighs, getting his thighs and his hips loosened up, and you know, it looked like he had the juice turned up quite a bit. And so that was part of his preparation to play. Like, he had the thing actually in the locker room, you know, during the pregame meeting. And you know, he was a veteran in his later years at that point, but he was still playing very effectively. And I know that technology certainly helped.
Yeah.
But you know, he was one that was probably quite a bit ahead of his time when you talk about, you know, personal therapy and you know, being ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
But look, I've had a great experience with this smaller unit. It's got plenty of juice for me, and I know you guys have bigger units that, you know, can probably, you know, generate enough power to light a high rise and stuff like that. But whatever it is, it's pretty cool, and it's very effective.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we're seeing this, especially the unit you have, like a lot of these now, it's starting to leave. I mean, it's obviously all over professional sports, but now teams collegiately, you know, are starting to discover it. Like Marquette University, I think they've got 12 of those units, and their basketball team literally are using it, you know, to oh, there you go. I love it. Yeah. Got it fired on.
Right here.
And they're using it.
Couple of stick-ons, and
Love it.
and you're in business. So
Did you use that today, Coach?
last night.
Nice.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So, so we're starting to see that, and Jay can attest to this, but, you know, for just to get going, right? Because it can fire things up, it gets things activated. And so pregame, that activation is become a critical component. I mean, we just had a Q&A with an MLB guy, and he's like, he wants to bring it into the, he was a middle reliever on a pro team, and he wanted to bring it into the bullpen because they're now becoming so accustomed to kind of warming things up, utilizing the direct current. And we're starting to see that at the collegiate level, and it's still one of the best kept secrets. I
heard you guys have a new machine coming out too. So, you know, if there's a way to trade this one in for a new one, you know, you guys got to let me know.
You're speaking his language now.
Yeah, you know, we're actually, it's funny. You're going to be, I'm sure Jeff or somebody will share with you. Yeah, the machine is a little more powerful, but a little bit more portable as well. So it's again, the union you have is fantastic. You know, and we've got, you know, we want to try to pride ourselves on being able to satisfy any user for anything, whether it's, kind of a weekend warrior, whether it's somebody that's recovering from surgery, or whether it's a professional athlete or a clinic or a doctor or PT. So we feel like we've got an answer or solution for everybody. So we're excited about that. Now, I can't let you go without a couple other questions, but our founder made sure that I wanted to ask you, and is it Thad Mata? Do you know Thad Mata?
I do, yeah. He coaches at Butler, right down the street from where we are in Indy.
Okay, so he said if you talk to him, because I guess he's got drop foot, Chip knows, because he's a huge Marquette alum, as well as big college basketball guy. I guess he's got drop foot. And I was asking Jake before this conversation that this is incredible for drop foot. So somehow we got to connect with him and get him, whether utilizing your device, or we can get him set up with one of our clinics in the Indianapolis area, or get him some help. But Jake, I don't know if you want to,
I'm sure he'd be all ears.
Yeah, so we'll do that. So before we leave, I mean, I got to tell you that video that Jake put together was incredible. So I just have to, give us myself and these listeners an insight to that first championship with the Mavericks. That had to be unbelievable. Like, share your thoughts on that whole process, because,
Yeah, well, it was a team that was a good team. People knew that we were going to be good. Probably win, 50 some games that season.
Mm-hmm.
We had a disappointing year the previous year, and lost in the first round. And then we traded for Tyson Chandler the summer of 2010. And Tyson brought an enthusiasm, a leadership element. He was a great defender, shot blocker, lob threat. And he was always, he was just constant personality, energy, physical energy, everything. And so he was the guy that kind of finished off that team.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had a very good year. I think we won 55 or 57 games or something like that. But because we had some, tough losses in the playoffs in previous years, people just assumed that, we might be able to win one round, but, expectations weren't real high. Well, we beat Portland in the first round, and Portland was a hard matchup. That was a 6-game series. We won game 6 on the road. It was a great victory for us. Mm-hmm. Round 2 was against the Lakers, who had won the previous 2 championships. So we're now squaring off against the 2-time defending champs. We stole game 1 of the series. Game 2 of the series, we won pretty convincingly. The hardest game of the series was game 3 at our place, because they finally realized that, we weren't going to go away.
Yeah, this is like, it's time to.
Yeah, and so game 3 was a war, and it came right down to the end, and we were able to win game 3, and so we went up 3-0.
Wow.
And then game 4, we hit, I think, 21 or 22 threes, which was really maybe even been an NBA playoff record at that time. And game 4 was, we won going away. It was an easy win. So now we're going to the third round against, and it turned out it was Oklahoma City. So we had pretty significant amount of rest headed into the Oklahoma series. They went 7 games with Memphis. And so, we win game 1 at home. Game 2, we got into a little too much of a shot trade for my liking, and we ended up losing game 2. And then we won game 3 in Oklahoma. We had a pretty significant lead, and we're able to hold on. And then game 4, we had a 15-point comeback in the last 6 minutes to win game 4. So now we're up 3-1 going home. And game 5 at our place, was similar to game 3 against LA. It was just a really, really tough game. And you got to remember, like, Westbrook, Durant are playing. They really sized down in that game, and they made it, and James Harden was on the team coming off the bench.
Wow.
They were super loaded, but they were young, and they just weren't quite ready to win. And so we outlasted them in game 5, and then we were, on to Miami, to play the Heat. And, they had a super team that they put together with LeBron James, Wayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. And then they had really good role players. But, it was our time. And we had a pretty simple plan. We were going to play a very persistent brand of basketball. We were going to play a very much an attacking brand of basketball. Yeah. We used zone defense quite a bit because the matchups weren't favorable for us, with their stars. And, you could say we caught lightning in a bottle a bit during that stretch, and we win Game 6 in Miami on the road. And we were so process driven throughout the whole thing that when Game 6 was over, it was almost like, gosh, I can't believe it's over.
Yeah. What's next?
So transfixed with everything happening. So it was an amazing feeling. It was Dirk's, championship year. He was MVP of the finals. Jason Kidd was on that team. He was still a great player. Jason Terry was awesome. And then, of course, we had Tyson and J.J. Barea and a lot of guys that played significant roles.
Do you still stay in contact with those guys? Is it a pretty close-knit team after the fact? Or?
Yeah, I do. I stay in touch with Dirk and have done some things to help him with his foundation. Tyson Chandler, I stayed in touch with last summer. Our bigs met us in Dallas during the summer, and Tyson was working with the Mavericks kind of on a part-time basis. And he came out to help us work with our bigs, and it was just awesome. He was tremendous. Jason Kidd is a head coach, obviously, in Dallas now. And, he's been a friend all along. J.J. Barea, I've kept in touch with. Jason Terry, coaches in Utah. It goes on and on. But when you have that kind of experience, whether it's, coaching a team like the Mavericks or playing with a team like the 86 Celtics, I mean, the relationships are strong and they last a lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's as a Chicago Bull fan and a Chicagoan and seeing Jordan and that whole era and having the privilege of sitting courtside, my experience is if you have never sit courtside, which you obviously have, I can't believe that there's passes can even get off because it's such a small court and these are giants and the passing lanes are absolutely like non-existent. On TV, it looks so easy. And then when you're actually seeing that, and then you get that experience to see, in my opinion, some of the best athletes in the world. I mean, to see LeBron and Jordan and, guys like Shaq, and the guy that comes to mind that I remember seeing live once that I thought was a man amongst boys was Allen Iverson. I mean, it was amazing to see that there's, even at that high level of the NBA, that there's these individuals that are just even that much better. That, so to experience all that throughout your career has to be, exciting and, and the journey had to be incredible. And we wish you all the best in your continue. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to next year. I know you tell our listeners a little bit what you've got on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, as you just mentioned, when you sit courtside, like I sat courtside this summer at the Summer League in Vegas, I mean, it's things are moving at a rate that you can't even imagine. I mean, the game is just it's at light speed, and so you just got to make sure if a loose ball comes your way that you get the hell out of the way because you can lose your life with those guys diving, into the first row. Yeah. But this year the Pacers, we had a great year last year. We got to Game 7 of the finals. Of course, Tyrese, had the Achilles injury, really 4 or 5 minutes into the game, and we had a great start to Game 7. He had his third three, and they called timeout. We were up 14-10. It was the kind of start that we really needed. And then he got injured 2 or 3 minutes later, and then of course that changed everything. But we will be without him this year, which will be a great challenge. But our team will have to view it differently. We'll have to, strategy wise, we'll have to adjust and, figure out ways to be effective playing the game, We need to become a better rebounding team. We need to obviously take care of the ball. And I think the big thing that stood out for us this past season was we were one of the most persistent teams in the league. So somebody did a stat of the number of times we had three guys or more picking up defensively in the backcourt this past season. And the tally was we had like 950 or something like that. And the next closest team was 400. And so, the way our team was structured, that kind of persistence, hard play, grit, all those kinds of things was really important. We needed to create leverage in the game on a full court defensive basis to be able to continue to play fast. And we're going to want to play fast again this year. But Tyrese is maybe the best there is in the game at facilitating that kind of pace. And so we're going to find new ways to generate it. But the challenge will be great, but I'm looking forward to it. We have great guys. We've got a tremendous coaching staff. And so it'll be upon us very quickly here.
Well, it sounds like as the head coach of that system, you're a thorn in every NBA side, because it's the last thing they want to feel is that much pressure throughout the entire game. And if you guys are putting that much pressure on the opposing teams, it's got to be, a testament to you and getting everybody kind of fired up, almost playoff bound, kind of playoff mindset throughout the entire, game. And it is such a long journey. I mean, that season, as we see with all these professional sports, the amount of time and energy and, wear and tear that it takes on the body, it's amazing, especially like you just described, just sitting courtside at the summer league. I can't even believe these guys can function after that much pounding on their bodies. So we're so glad that you've got access to this direct current. We're helping so many others, and now it sounds like we've got a trade-in. We've got a trade-in coming as soon as we get off this Q&A for the new product. But we're glad we're able to help you. We're glad, if there's anything we can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we can't thank you enough for your time today. Enjoy Charlottesville. Looks like it's a beautiful day, and appreciate your time.
Well, I'm proud to be an ambassador, and I've enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to more conversations down the road. Thank you.
Love it. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay.